Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the absolutely wild story of Kevin Mitnick. You know, how does a kid who just wanted to be a magician end up becoming the most wanted cybercriminal in US history? It's crazy. We're basing this directly on his autobiography, Ghost in the Wires. And this is the story that literally defined how we view hackers today. The media called him a villain, the government launched a massive manhunt, the public was terrified. It's essentially a real-life catch me if you can, but playing out right at the dawn of modern IT systems.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a quote that perfectly captures Mitnick's entire philosophy. He said, "To think about technology, you have to think about the people behind technology, because it's usually easier to hack a human than it is to hack technology." That right there, that is everything you need to know about how his mind worked. I mean, we usually picture hacking as this hyper-complex coding, busting through firewalls, right? But Mitnick figured out super early on that the absolute weakest link in a multi-million-dollar security system isn't the software. A firewall is going to do exactly what it's programmed to do, 100% of the time. But humans, we get tired, we get distracted, we feel sympathetic, or, we just want to be helpful. And that human element is exactly what he targeted.
Section 1. The Hacker's Magic Trick.
So, as a kid, Kevin was totally obsessed with magic tricks, but it wasn't really the sleight of hand that hooked him. It was the psychological control, the ability to direct your attention exactly where he wanted it to go. And in the digital world, this translates into what we call social engineering. It became his primary weapon, way more than complex coding. Because think about it, in everyday life, people generally want to be helpful, right? We want to do the right thing. By exploiting that basic human decency, Mitnick realized he could mislead people into doing things they absolutely shouldn't do, or trick them into revealing closely guarded secrets. It's not just a cheap trick, it's a highly calculated exploitation of human nature.
And you can see this in his very first heist, which happened back in the summer of 1975 when he was just 12 years old. He managed to manipulate a bus driver to score a whole summer of free rides in Los Angeles. Back then, fares were 25 cents, plus 10 cents for a transfer, which, really adds up for a kid. But he didn't write some complex code to beat the transit system. No, he just crafted this innocent story about a school project that required unusual cardboard shapes. Why? Just so he could learn exactly where the bus driver bought his unique hole punch tool. Once he had that info, he tracked the drivers to the bus depot, literally dug through the trash for discarded ticket booklets, and started punching his own transfers. A 12-year-old kid completely bypassing the city's transit system just by having a friendly chat with the driver. Fast forward a bit to when he's 17, and Mitnick escalates this social engineering into phone phreaking. This was a whole subculture of people hacking telecom networks. But while the other phreakers were focusing on, generating electronic tones to trick the hardware, Kevin was all about the social game. Case in point, he wanted Bruce Springsteen's unlisted private number. So he just confidently calls up the non-public bureau, posing as an internal employee named Jake Roberts. He spins this completely fake scenario about needing to update an authorization list, and boom, he gets a manager's details. Then he calls right back, uses that manager's name to manipulate a technician, and has that highly restricted department's calls forwarded directly to his own phone. He literally got the gatekeepers to open the gates for him voluntarily.
Section 2. Escalating to corporate hacks.
So we enter the 1980s, and Mitnick is looking for the ultimate intellectual challenge. He turns his attention to massive corporate networks. But to really grasp this, we have to look at the context of the era. The media and the government were absolutely terrified, mostly because of the 1983 movie War Games. You remember? The one where a kid accidentally almost starts World War III? That movie sparked massive real-world panic. I mean, President Reagan was ordering investigations, and politicians literally started viewing hackers as existential threats. But Mitnick's reality, it was entirely different. He wasn't some digital terrorist or villain. He was driven purely by intellectual curiosity, the thrill of the puzzle, and this desperate desire to just pull things apart and learn how complex systems worked behind the scenes.
Which brings us to this perfectly synchronized digital and social heist against DEC, which at the time was the world's second-largest computer maker. Mitnick and his friend Lenny wanted the source code for DEC's virtual memory system, so here's how they did it. Lenny physically manipulated phone wiring to route their connections through untraceable fax lines. Meanwhile, Kevin hopped on 2 public payphones. Using his trademarked social engineering, he completely tricked a DEC operator into typing a specific diagnostic command, a spawn command. Just think about that for a second. The operator voluntarily typed the exact command that silently created a login process directly into Lenny's modem connection. They were handed the keys to the castle, and they didn't have to break a single physical lock. But once they actually had the source code, which was thousands of tons of data, they had to hide it somewhere. So what did they do? They compressed and encrypted the whole thing so it just looked like digital garbage. Then they routed it through ARPANET, which was basically the early precursor to the internet we use today. But here is the craziest part. To avoid keeping the stolen property on their own machines, they utilized an existing backdoor left by a German hacker group, and in this incredible twist of irony, they literally hid this massive stolen corporate secret on servers deep inside a NASA laboratory at the Jet Propulsion Lab. It's just a jaw-dropping level of audacity, right?
Section 3. The Cat and Mouse Game.
So, how did this all fall apart? Over a remarkably petty dispute. Kevin and Lenny had this running bet. Whoever hacked the other's corporate system won a dinner in Beverly Hills. Well, Kevin kept winning, and Lenny angrily refused to pay up the $150. In retaliation, Kevin actually impersonated an IRS agent to try and garnish Lenny's wages. Unsurprisingly, Lenny was furious, marched straight to the FBI, and became an informant. After Kevin discovered this betrayal in 1992, he went on the run. But here's the thing about life as a fugitive. It was agonizingly boring for someone with his intellect. Desperate for some kind of stimulation, he eventually broke into the personal network of Tsutomu Shimomura, a really prominent security researcher who was working with the FBI. And he didn't just break in quietly. No, he recklessly left mocking voicemails on Shimomura's machine, bragging that his technique was superior.
To actually breach Shimomura's highly secure network, Mitnick used this incredibly complex method called IP spoofing. And this proved that his technical chops absolutely matched his smooth talking. Here's how it works in simple terms. Every piece of data on the internet has an IP header that shows where it came from. Think of it like forging the return address on an envelope, so when the recipient gets it, they think the letter is from a trusted friend instead of a total stranger. Mitnick figured out how to forge this header, making his malicious attacks look exactly like they were coming from a trusted, internal computer right there within Shimomura's own network. This technique was so advanced at the time that the National Computer Emergency Response Team actually had to issue a nationwide front-page warning about it. But ultimately, this legendary hacker wasn't caught by some multi-million-dollar firewall. Shimomura and his team managed to track the attacks back to a netcom server, and a technician there used a real-time keylogger, which, by the way, was originally just meant to be a troubleshooting tool, to watch exactly what the hacker was typing live on their screen. And what they saw is wildly ironic. The great untraceable hacker logged into a chat room and just started furiously complaining about an article and a photo of himself in the New York Times. His own ego over front-page media coverage gave them the exact smoking gun they needed. They traced his connection straight to an apartment in Raleigh, North Carolina, and that led to his final capture.
Section 4. Capture and Cyber Controversy.
Following his 1995 arrest, the whole narrative just quickly spiraled completely out of control. Mitnick instantly became the poster child for the booming public fear of cybercrime. The prosecution used these extreme, honestly theatrical hypotheticals to justify their actions. I mean, get this. The government actually stood up in a federal court and claimed that if Mitnick was allowed anywhere near a telephone, he could whistle a specific tone, connect to military defense systems, and launch a nuclear missile. Because of these incredibly exaggerated claims, which were literally influenced by that movie War Games, federal judges threw him into strict solitary confinement. He was completely isolated and banned from even touching a phone. And the numbers thrown around were just as crazy. Corporations like Motorola, Nokia, and Fujitsu claimed his actions caused a staggering $300 million in damages. They were painting him entirely as a digital terrorist. Their argument was that because he had accessed and copied their proprietary software and source code while he was on the run, the theoretical loss of value was astronomical. They basically took the total research and development costs of the software and claimed it as a total loss. Of course, the media ran with these massive numbers, which completely cemented his reputation in the public eye as one of the most dangerous men in America. But here is the ultimate contradiction of the whole case. That massive $300 million claim, it was eventually reduced in his plea deal to just $125 in restitution. Yeah, you heard that right. After years of pretrial detention, when the dust finally settled and the actual provable financial damage was strictly calculated, it wasn't hundreds of millions. It was barely enough to buy a nice dinner. He had copied the code for the thrill of the puzzle for the challenge. He wasn't selling it to foreign governments or trying to destroy these companies. This massive discrepancy between the extreme claims and the actual reality is what fueled the global Free Kevin movement. Supporters actively protested what they viewed as a wildly unjust prosecution. The hacker community aggressively rallied behind him.
Yet journalists publishing books questioning the official narrative, asking if the evidence had been exaggerated by law enforcement. Activists were out there hacking and defacing massive websites like Yahoo and the New York Times in protest. Bright yellow Free Kevin bumper stickers started popping up on cars all over the country. He had effectively become a martyr for the digital age.
Section 5. Legacy of a Hacker.
When Mitnick was finally released in 2000, after serving over 5 years, his probation terms were incredibly strict. He wasn't even allowed to own a mobile phone or television for 3 whole years. He could only use a landline. But as those restrictions finally lifted, he successfully transitioned into a highly sought-after security consultant. He realized that the word hacker actually gave him unparalleled authority, so he reinvented himself as a white hat hacker. That's a professional who legally audits corporate networks to find and fix the exact same kinds of flaws he used to exploit. He transformed from the world's most wanted fugitive into a highly respected professional before he passed away in 2023.
Speaking directly to the American public on 60 Minutes shortly after his release, he really humanized his actions. He clarified once and for all that his motivation was always the thrill of the puzzle, never financial gain. He explained that, if he were just a traditional thief looking to make a quick buck, it would have been super easy for the public to understand. But his drive was deep curiosity. He just wanted to peek behind the curtain to see exactly how the world's most secure systems actually functioned, and to prove to himself that he could outsmart them.
I'll leave you with this final thought to consider. In a world completely obsessed with firewalls, encryption, and biometric scanners, are we actually doing enough to protect the human element? Kevin Mitnick proved over and over again that a simple phone call, a polite request, and a dash of confidence can completely bypass the most expensive technology on Earth. The software has evolved drastically, but human nature? It really hasn't. So who holds the keys to your digital life? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to keep questioning what you think is secure.